The Florida sun had begun its descent, casting a warm, golden hue across the small town of Sunridge. The air was thick with humidity, the kind that made your clothes stick to your skin, and the scent of magnolias heavy. The streets were quiet, save for the occasional hum of a passing car or the distant laughter of children playing. It was a place where everyone knew everyone, where secrets were hard to keep, and where life flowed with the easy rhythm of a slow southern drawl. Josh Mitchell, a local auto mechanic, was wrapping up his day at Mitchell's Garage, the family business he had inherited after his father's passing. The garage was a relic of a bygone era, with vintage signs advertising oil brands no longer in existence and the faint smell of gasoline permeating the air. Josh had always been a man of routine, content with the predictable cadence of his life. He found solace in the mechanical world, where problems could be solved with the right tools and a bit of elbow grease. But that evening, something out of the ordinary was about to shatter his routine. As Josh locked up the garage, his eyes caught sight of a strange glow in the distance. It was subtle, a soft blue luminescence flickering near the side of the road, about a mile down. Curiosity piqued, Josh hopped into his beat-up Chevy truck, the engine roaring to life with a reluctant grumble. He drove toward the light, the crunch of gravel beneath his tires the only sound in the stillness of the evening. As he approached, the glow grew more distinct, and Josh's heart began to race. Standing by the roadside was a woman unlike anyone he had ever seen. She was ethereal with smooth blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the fading light. Her hair was a cascade of inky black, flowing down her back like a waterfall of midnight. She wore a form-fitting suit of silvery material that clung to her lithe frame, catching the light in a way that made her appear almost otherworldly. But it was her eyes that truly captivated Josh, deep, cerulean pools that held a mix of fear, determination, and something ancient and untouchable. Josh stopped the truck and stepped out, feeling a knot of anxiety twist in his stomach. "Hey there, you all right?" he called out, trying to keep his voice steady. The woman turned to face him, her expression unreadable. For a moment, there was silence, the kind that stretches out and makes you acutely aware of every second ticking by. "I'm lost," she finally spoke, her voice soft but clear, with a musical lilt that hinted at an accent Josh couldn't place. "I need help." Josh took a cautious step forward, his eyes scanning her for any signs of injury. "Do you need me to call someone? An ambulance? Police?" He was met with a quick shake of her head, a hint of panic flashing in her eyes. "No police," she said quickly. "Please I need a place to stay, somewhere safe, just for a little while." Josh hesitated. There was something undeniably strange about the situation, but he couldn't shake the feeling that she was genuinely in trouble. He took a deep breath and nodded. "All right, you can stay with me for the night, but we need to talk about what's going on. What's your name?" She looked at him, her eyes softening. "Mila," she said, almost as if testing the word on her tongue. "My name is Mila." With that, Josh led Mila to the truck and opened the passenger door. As she climbed in, he couldn't help but notice the grace with which she moved, like a dancer gliding across a stage. He climbed into the driver's seat and pulled back onto the road, the silence between them heavy with unspoken questions. He drove through the quiet streets of Sunridge, glancing occasionally at Mila, who stared out the window with a distant, haunted look. They arrived at Josh's modest home on the outskirts of town, a small single-story house with peeling paint and a well-worn porch. The house was a testament to Josh's simple lifestyle, filled with mismatched furniture and the comforting clutter of a life lived alone. He led Mila inside, offering her a seat on the couch. As she sat, she seemed to relax slightly, though her eyes never stopped darting around, taking in her surroundings. "Can I get you something? Water?" "Tea," Josh offered, trying to ease the tension. "Water would be nice," Mila replied, her voice barely above a whisper. As Josh moved to the kitchen, she watched him with a curious intensity, as if trying to gauge his intentions. He returned with a glass of water, handing it to her with a small, reassuring smile. "Here you go. So Mila, you said you're lost. Where are you from?" Mila took a sip of the water, her fingers trembling slightly as she held the glass. She looked up at Josh, her eyes searching his face for a moment before she spoke. "I'm not from around here, not from this planet, actually." Josh blinked, taken aback by her words. He opened his mouth to say something but found himself at a loss. Mila continued, sensing his disbelief. I know it sounds crazy, but I'm telling the truth. I'm from a planet called Salara. I came here to escape. Someone dangerous, her voice faltered, a flicker of fear crossing her face. Josh sat down across from her, trying to process what she was saying. His mind raced, 100 questions bubbling to the surface. Okay, let's say I believe you. Why Earth? Why come here? Mila sighed, setting the glass down on the coffee table. I didn't have much of a choice. My people. We have the technology to travel between worlds, but it's not easy. I came here because I needed to hide, to find a place where I could blend in. But it seems I've already attracted unwanted attention. Josh leaned forward, his brow furrowing. What kind of attention? She hesitated, her eyes flickering with uncertainty. His name is Zeski. He's from a neighboring planet, Erindor, a tyrant who wants to conquer Salara. My people wanted to use me as a pawn, to marry him and secure an alliance. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't let him use me like that, so I ran. Josh felt a pang of sympathy for her. The idea of being forced into a marriage, especially with someone dangerous, struck a chord with him. He ran a hand through his hair, sighing. So you're hiding from this Zeski guy and his people. That why you don't want the police involved? Mila nodded. Yes, if they find me, they'll force me back. Or worse, they'll hurt the people here. I can't let that happen. Josh sat back, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. The situation was beyond anything he could have imagined, but there was a sincerity in Mila's eyes that made him want to believe her. He knew the risks, but something inside him urged him to help her, to protect her from whatever danger she was fleeing. All right, he said finally, meeting her gaze. You can stay here. We'll figure this out together. But we need to be careful. If anyone asks, we'll tell them you're my wife. It'll keep people from asking too many questions. Mila looked at him in surprise, a small smile playing on her lips. Thank you, Josh. I don't know how to repay you. He shrugged, trying to play it cool, despite the strange thrill that ran through him at the thought of pretending to be married to this beautiful, mysterious woman. We'll figure it out. Just try to relax. You're safe here. As the evening wore on, they settled into an uneasy companionship, both aware of the precarious situation they were in. Josh set up a makeshift bed for Mila in the spare room, feeling a strange mix of protectiveness and curiosity. Who was this alien woman, really, and what had he gotten himself into? As he lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, Josh couldn't shake the feeling that his life was about to change in ways he couldn't yet fathom. The arrival of Mila had already shattered the quiet predictability of his world, and he had a sense that things would only get more complicated from here. But despite the uncertainty, a small part of him was excited. For the first time in a long while, he felt like something extraordinary was unfolding, and he was right in the middle of it. In the darkness, as the town of Sunridge slept, Josh drifted off with the image of Mila's luminous blue eyes lingering in his mind. Little did he know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would take him far beyond the stars, into a world of intrigue, danger, and a love that transcended the boundaries of space and time. Morning in Sunridge came gently, with the first light of dawn creeping through the windows of Josh's modest home. The chirping of birds and the distant hum of traffic marked the beginning of a new day. Josh awoke to the faint smell of coffee, a comforting aroma that pulled him from the remnants of a dream he couldn't quite remember. He stretched, the events of the previous night slowly coming back to him. Mila, the mysterious alien woman, was asleep in the spare room, hiding from a dangerous tyrant from another world. He dressed quickly and headed to the kitchen, where he found Mila standing by the window, gazing out at the quiet street. Her hair, still slightly mussed from sleep, fell around her shoulders in waves of black. She wore a simple outfit Josh had hastily put together for her, a pair of jeans and a t-shirt he'd found in the back of his closet. The clothes were a bit too big, but they would do for now. She turned as he entered, a soft smile touching her lips. "Good morning," she greeted, her voice still carrying that melodic lilt. "I hope you don't mind I found the coffee. I thought it might be a good idea to start learning more about, well, everything." Josh chuckled, pouring himself a cup. "No problem." "Coffee's a good place to start." He took a sip, savoring the warmth. "How'd you sleep?" Mila's smile faded slightly, her eyes darkening with a hint of worry. "Not well. I kept thinking about everything that's happened, and what could happen." Josh nodded, understanding the weight of her situation. He leaned against the counter, trying to find the right words. "We'll figure this out, but we need to keep a low profile. Sunridge is a small town, people notice things. If we're going to say you're my wife, we need to make it convincing. Mila tilted her head, curiosity gleaming in her eyes. Tell me about Earth marriages. How do they work? Josh scratched his head, slightly embarrassed. Well, it varies, but generally, a marriage is a partnership. Two people decide to spend their lives together, support each other. There are ceremonies, legal documents, and usually a lot of questions from family and friends. He paused, considering how best to explain. It's a big deal. Mila listened intently, her expression thoughtful. If we pretend to be married. Josh hesitated, feeling a strange mix of emotions. It means we'll need to act like we're close, like we know each other well. People might ask questions, and we'll need to have answers. We should probably come up with a backstory. Mila said, You know, John, I would never do you a favor for nothing. I'm going to pay you a lot of money. John said, I don't want anything in return. I just want you to be good. Mila nodded, her eyes brightening with determination. Then let's do it. Let's create our story. They spent the morning concocting their fictional history, filling in details about how they met, fell in love, and decided to settle in Sunridge. They agreed on a simple narrative. Josh had met Mila while traveling abroad, though they kept the specifics vague, and she had moved to the United States to be with him. It was a plausible story, and given Sunridge's quiet nature, it was unlikely to be scrutinized too closely. As they talked, Josh found himself increasingly fascinated by Mila. Despite the gravity of her situation, she displayed a remarkable sense of humor and curiosity about Earth. She asked questions about everything: food, music, movies, and Josh enjoyed sharing his world with her. In return, she offered glimpses into her own life on Solara, describing her home planet with a mix of nostalgia and sadness. Solara, as Mila described it, was a planet of vibrant landscapes and advanced technology. Her people, known as the Solarans, were a peaceful race with a rich culture, but their tranquility had been shattered by the looming threat of Zeski and his Irandorian forces. The political marriage Mila had fled from was an attempt by her planet's leaders to placate Zeski, to prevent a war that could devastate their world. Josh listened, feeling a growing sense of responsibility. He had stumbled into something far bigger than himself, and yet he felt an unspoken bond forming between him and Mila. They were two people from vastly different worlds, brought together by circumstance and necessity. And as they continued to weave their fictional marriage, Josh couldn't help but feel a spark of something real beneath the surface. The day passed quickly, and soon it was time for Josh to head to the garage. As he prepared to leave, he hesitated, unsure if it was safe to leave Mila alone. She sensed his concern and gave him a reassuring smile. I'll be fine, Josh, she said, her voice gentle. I won't leave the house, and if anyone comes by, I'll stay out of sight. You don't need to worry about me. Josh nodded, though he couldn't shake the protective instinct rising within him. All right, but call me if anything happens. Okay, he handed her his spare cell phone, showing her how to use it. Mila accepted it with a nod. Thank you. For everything. As Josh drove to the garage, he couldn't help but think about the strange turn his life had taken. Just days ago, he was an ordinary mechanic, living a quiet, unremarkable life. Now he was part of a bizarre conspiracy, hiding an alien woman from a galactic tyrant. It was surreal, and yet a part of him felt more alive than ever. At the garage, Josh threw himself into work, grateful for the distraction. The familiar clatter of tools and the hum of engines were comforting, grounding him in the mundane reality of his life. But even as he worked, his mind kept drifting back to Mila. He wondered what she was doing, how she was coping with the strange new world she found herself in. Meanwhile, back at the house, Mila explored her temporary home with quiet curiosity. She marveled at the simple technology, the array of gadgets and appliances that seemed almost quaint compared to the advanced devices she was used to. But what fascinated her most was the mundane beauty of Earth. She stood by the window, watching as the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting a golden glow over the neighborhood. She noticed the vibrant colors of the flowers in the garden, the way the leaves rustled in the breeze. It was all so different from Solara, yet there was a warmth and simplicity to it that she found comforting. As the day wore on, Mila found herself thinking about Josh. He was kind and patient, and despite the bizarre circumstances, he had treated her with respect and understanding. She appreciated his willingness to help, even if it meant risking his own safety. There was something about him that put her at ease, a steady presence that made her feel safe. She wondered what he thought of her, if he found her as strange and fascinating as she found him. In the late afternoon, Josh returned home, looking tired but satisfied. He found Mila sitting on the porch, sipping a glass of lemonade she had found in the fridge. She looked up as he approached, a smile lighting up her face. "Welcome back," she greeted him, her tone light. "How was your day?" Josh grinned, sitting down beside her. Same old, same old. A couple of oil changes, a transmission fix. Nothing too exciting." He glanced at her, noticing the relaxed expression on her face. "How about you? How was your first day on Earth?" Mila chuckled, her laughter a melodic sound that made Josh's heart skip a beat. It was interesting. "I spent most of the day exploring the house and watching the neighborhood. It's peaceful here." They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching as the sky turned shades of pink and orange. Josh felt a strange sense of contentment, a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. He glanced at Mila, noticing the soft glow of her skin in the fading light. She looked otherworldly, yet there was a gentleness to her that made her seem so human. As night fell, they moved inside, preparing a simple dinner together. Josh was amused by Mila's fascination with the food, her curiosity about the various ingredients and flavors. They ate in the living room, chatting about trivial things, favorite foods, music, and hobbies. It was a pleasant evening, and for a moment, it felt almost normal. After dinner, they sat on the couch, talking about their next steps. They discussed the importance of keeping up appearances, maintaining their cover story. They agreed to go out in public occasionally to reinforce their image as a married couple. It was a strange arrangement, but it was necessary. As the night wore on, Josh found himself relaxing in Mila's presence. He felt a connection with her, a bond that went beyond their circumstances. He realized that, despite the uncertainty and danger, he was glad she had come into his life. She had brought a spark of excitement, a sense of adventure that had been missing. Eventually, they both retired for the night, retreating to their separate rooms. As Josh lay in bed, he couldn't help but think about Mila. He wondered what the future held for them, if they could truly keep up the charade and stay safe from Zeski's agents. But most of all, he wondered about the growing feelings he had for her. It was too soon to say what they meant, but he knew one thing for sure: Mila had changed his life, and he was willing to do whatever it took to protect her. In the quiet of the night, Josh drifted off to sleep, feeling a strange mix of hope and apprehension. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with potential dangers and challenges, but for the first time in a long while he felt alive, ready to face whatever came their way. And as he dreamed, he couldn't help but see Mila's face, her luminous blue eyes filled with a warmth that made him believe that, somehow, everything would be all right. The days following Mila's arrival settled into a cautious rhythm. Josh and Mila played their roles as a married couple with increasing ease, their interactions growing more natural. They made occasional appearances in town, attending local events and frequenting the diner where Josh was a regular. To the townspeople, they were a charming, if slightly unusual, couple, Josh with his easygoing demeanor and Mila with her exotic beauty and soft-spoken manner. But beneath the surface, tension simmered as they navigated the delicate balance between blending in and staying vigilant. It wasn't long before their facade was tested. One evening, as they were enjoying a quiet dinner at home, the peace was shattered by the piercing ring of the doorbell. Josh and Mila exchanged a quick glance, their relaxed expressions replaced with wary anticipation. Josh rose from the table, gesturing for Mila to stay behind as he approached the door. He took a deep breath and opened it, revealing a man in his late 30s standing on the porch. The stranger was dressed in a sharp, dark suit that seemed out of place in the laid-back town of Sunridge. His hair was slicked back, and he wore an unreadable expression. But what caught Josh's attention were the man's eyes, cold, calculating, and piercingly blue, a shade that mirrored Mila's own. A chill ran down Josh's spine as he realized this was no ordinary visitor. "Good evening," the man said smoothly, his voice carrying a subtle accent that Josh couldn't place. "I apologize for the intrusion. My name is Agent Lark, and I'm here on behalf of the government." He flashed a badge, though Josh barely registered it, his mind racing. "May I come in?" Josh hesitated, forcing a casual smile. Sure, come on in." He stepped aside, allowing Agent Lark to enter. As the man crossed the threshold, Josh closed the door behind him, his heart pounding. He led the agent to the living room, where Mila sat, her posture tense but composed. Lark's eyes flicked to Mila, a flicker of recognition passing through them before he turned back to Josh. "I've heard a lot about you two," he said, taking a seat. "Quite the story, meeting abroad, getting married, moving to this charming little town. It's almost too perfect." Josh felt a knot form in his stomach. "Yeah, well, life's full of surprises," he replied, trying to keep his tone light. "So what brings you here, Agent Lark?" The agent leaned back, his gaze never leaving Mila. "I'm here on a sensitive matter. You see, there's been some unusual activity reported in the area. Strange lights, unexplained phenomena. We've had reports of a woman matching your wife's description. I'm sure you understand the need for discretion." Josh's grip tightened on the arm of the chair. He glanced at Mila, who met his gaze with a steady calm. "I don't know what you're talking about," Josh said, trying to keep the edge out of his voice. "Mila and I have been living quietly here, minding our own business." Lark smiled, a cold, predatory grin. "Of course. But sometimes things aren't as they seem." He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small device. "This is a detector for certain frequencies. Mind if I test something?" Before Josh could respond, Lark activated the device. A low hum filled the room, accompanied by a series of beeps. Josh's eyes darted to Mila, who remained motionless, her expression unreadable. The device's beeping grew louder, and Lark's smile widened. "Interesting," he murmured, his eyes glinting with a dangerous light. "Very interesting." Josh's mind raced, searching for a way out of this situation. He could feel the tension building, a storm about to break. Just as he was about to speak, Mila stood, her voice calm but firm. "Enough," she said, her gaze locked on Lark. "You know who I am. What do you want?" Lark's smile faded, replaced with a look of cold satisfaction. "Finally, we can dispense with the charade. You, Mila of Solara, are under investigation for violating intergalactic protocols and evading lawful capture. My mission is to ensure your return to your rightful place." Josh felt a surge of anger and protectiveness. He stepped forward, placing himself between Mila and Lark. "She's not going anywhere," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You have no right." Lark cut him off with a dismissive wave. "Spare me the heroics. You have no idea what's at stake here." He stood, pocketing the device. "This isn't over. We'll be watching." With that, he turned and strode toward the door. Josh and Mila followed, tension radiating from them. Lark paused at the threshold, glancing back over his shoulder. "Enjoy your evening," he said, his tone dripping with menace. Then he was gone, leaving Josh and Mila standing in the doorway, the weight of his threat hanging in the air. As soon as the door closed, Mila sagged against the wall, her calm facade crumbling. Josh rushed to her side, his hand on her shoulder. "Are you okay?" he asked, concern etching his features. Mila nodded, though her eyes were distant. "We need to leave," she said, her voice shaky. "They know who I am. It's not safe here anymore." Josh's mind whirred with possibilities, weighing their options. The encounter with Agent Lark had confirmed his worst fears. They were being hunted. And now their cover was blown. There was no telling what lengths Zeski's agents would go to capture Mila. "We can't just run blindly," Josh said, trying to think clearly. "We need a plan, somewhere to go where they can't find us." Mila looked at him, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and determination. "I have an idea. There's a place in the southwest, remote, isolated. It's where I first arrived on Earth. There's a facility there with technology that might help us send a message to Solara, warn them about Zeski's plans. But it's risky." Josh nodded, feeling a sense of purpose solidify within him. "Then that's where we'll go. We'll figure out the rest on the way." They moved quickly, packing only the essentials. Josh felt a pang of sadness as he looked around his home, realizing he might never return. But there was no time for sentimentality. They were running against the clock. As they loaded the truck, Josh glanced at Mila, who was staring at the house with a wistful expression. He stepped closer, placing a reassuring hand on her back. "We'll get through this," he said softly. "We'll find a way to keep you safe." Mila looked up at him, a small, grateful smile on her lips. "Thank you, Josh, for everything." They climbed into the truck, the weight of their predicament pressing down on them. As they drove through the quiet streets of Sunridge, the town seemed to hold its breath, unaware of the extraordinary events unfolding in its midst. Josh kept his eyes on the road, his mind focused on the journey ahead. They were venturing into the unknown, with only a fragile hope to guide them. The night stretched before them, a vast expanse of darkness dotted with the occasional glow of distant lights. As they left the town behind, the tension began to ease, replaced by a strange sense of freedom. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, Josh felt like they were taking control of their destiny. They were no longer passive participants in a cosmic game, they were fighting back. The miles passed in a blur, the truck's engine a constant hum in the background. Josh and Mila spoke little, each lost in their thoughts. The reality of their situation hung heavy in the air, a reminder of the stakes they faced. But there was also an unspoken understanding between them, a bond forged in the crucible of danger and uncertainty. As they drove through the night, Josh couldn't help but steal glances at Mila. She sat quietly, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the dashboard. There was a resilience to her, a strength that belied her delicate appearance. He admired her courage, her determination to stand up against forces far beyond her control. And he realized with a pang of clarity that he was willing to risk everything to protect her. The hours slipped by, the landscape changing from the lush greenery of Florida to the arid expanses of the American Southwest. The air grew cooler, the night sky a vast canvas of stars. They drove through small towns and deserted stretches of highway, the silence punctuated only by the occasional rustle of wind or the distant howl of a coyote. As dawn approached, they reached a remote stretch of desert, a place where civilization seemed to fade away. Mila directed Josh to a narrow dirt road, barely visible in the early morning light. They followed it for several miles, the truck bouncing over the rough terrain. Finally, they arrived at a secluded facility, hidden among the rocky hills. The building was unremarkable, a small, nondescript structure that looked abandoned. But as they approached, Mila's demeanor shifted, a spark of hope igniting in her eyes. She led Josh to a hidden entrance, concealed behind a rocky outcrop. With a few deft movements, she activated a panel, revealing a sleek, high-tech door that slid open with a soft hiss. Josh followed her inside, feeling a surge of anticipation. The interior was a stark contrast to the exterior, clean, modern, and filled with advanced technology. Mila moved with purpose, navigating the space with a familiarity that spoke of prior knowledge. She led him to a control room, where a series of consoles and monitors awaited. "This is it," Mila said, her voice filled with a mix of relief and determination. "We can send a message to Salara from here. If we're lucky, we can warn them about Zeski and get help." Josh nodded, his focus sharp. "What do you need me to do?" Mila glanced at him, a grateful smile on her lips. "Just be ready. This could get tricky." She moved to the console, her fingers flying over the controls with practiced ease. The screens flickered to life, displaying a series of complex symbols and diagrams. Mila worked quickly, her brow furrowed in concentration. Josh watched, feeling a surge of admiration for her skill and confidence. As the system powered up, a soft hum filled the room, growing in intensity. Mila's expression became tense, her eyes flicking to the monitors. "Something's wrong," she muttered, her fingers tapping rapidly on the console. Josh stepped closer, concern etching his features. "What is it?" Mila bit her lip, her gaze fixed on the screen. "There's interference. Someone's trying to block the signal." A cold dread settled in Josh's stomach. "Zeski." Mila nodded, her face pale. "It has to be. He's found us." The hum grew louder, the monitors flickering as the interference intensified. Josh felt a surge of panic, his mind racing. They were running out of time. He glanced at Mila, who was frantically working to override the interference. "Can you do it?" he asked, his voice urgent. Mila hesitated, her eyes filled with determination. "I think so. But we need to act fast." As she continued to work, Josh felt a strange calm settle over him. Despite the danger, he felt a sense of clarity, a focus that sharpened his senses. He knew what he needed to do. He moved to the door, glancing back at Mila. "I'm going to keep an eye out. If anyone comes, I'll hold them off." Mila looked up, her eyes wide with surprise. "Josh, you don't have to." "I want to," he interrupted, his voice firm. "We're in this together." Mila's expression softened, a flicker of emotion crossing her face. "Thank you," she whispered. With a nod, Josh stepped outside, the cool desert air hitting his face. He scanned the horizon, his senses on high alert. The facility was isolated, surrounded by rocky hills and open desert. There was no sign of movement, no indication of an imminent threat. But he knew better than to let his guard down. Minutes passed, the tension building with each passing second. Josh felt his pulse quicken, a mix of fear and adrenaline coursing through him. He glanced back at the entrance, wondering how much time Mila needed. They were on borrowed time, and the thought of Zeski's agents finding them sent a chill down his spine. Suddenly, a distant rumble caught his attention. He squinted, his eyes searching the horizon. There, in the distance, a cloud of dust rose, accompanied by the faint sound of engines. Josh's heart sank. They were coming. He turned and rushed back inside, his voice urgent. "Mila, we have company." Mila's head snapped up, her eyes wide with alarm. "How far?" Josh glanced over his shoulder, estimating the distance. Not far. Maybe a couple of miles. Mila's expression tightened with resolve. "I need a few more minutes. I can do this." Josh nodded, feeling a surge of determination. He grabbed a nearby metal pipe, the closest thing to a weapon he could find. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. He positioned himself near the entrance, ready to defend Mila at all costs. The next few minutes stretched into an eternity. Josh's grip tightened on the pipe, his senses heightened. The rumble of engines grew louder, the cloud of dust approaching rapidly. He could see the vehicles, now sleek, black SUVs speeding toward the facility. Just as the first SUV skidded to a halt, a high-pitched beep echoed from the control room. Josh turned, his heart leaping in his chest. Mila stood at the console, her face lit with triumph. "I did it," she exclaimed, her voice filled with relief. "The message is sent." Before Josh could respond, the door burst open, and a group of armed men stormed in. They were dressed in black, their faces obscured by helmets. The leader, a tall, imposing figure, raised his weapon, aiming it at Mila. "Step away from the console," the man ordered, his voice cold and authoritative. Josh stepped forward, positioning himself between the man and Mila. "Over my dead body," he growled, his grip tightening on the pipe. The man smirked, a dark amusement in his eyes. "That can be arranged." Before he could act, Mila intervened. "Wait," she called out, her voice firm. She stepped forward, her hands raised in surrender. "I'll go with you. Just leave him out of this." Josh's heart clenched, a mix of fear and anger surging through him. "Mila, no." She turned to him, her eyes filled with a quiet resolve. "It's okay, Josh. It's the only way." The man lowered his weapon slightly, a satisfied smile on his lips. Smart choice. As the men moved to restrain Mila, Josh felt a surge of desperation. He couldn't let them take her. He stepped forward, ready to fight, but Mila's voice stopped him. "Josh, please," she pleaded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Trust me." He hesitated, his heart breaking at the sight of her, but he knew she was right. There was no other way. With a heavy heart, he lowered the pipe, stepping back. The men bound Mila's hands and led her toward the door. As they passed, Mila glanced back at Josh, her eyes filled with a silent promise. "I'll find a way back," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Josh watched helplessly as they took her away, the weight of their predicament crashing down on him. The last thing he saw was the door closing behind them, sealing her fate. He stood there, alone in the empty facility, the echo of her words ringing in his ears. He had lost her, but the message was sent. There was still hope, a chance to stop Zeski and save Mila. But for now, all he could do was wait and hope that their message reached Solara in time. As the sun rose over the desert, bathing the landscape in golden light, Josh stood in the doorway, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders. He had made a promise to protect Mila, and he would keep it. No matter what it took, he would find her and bring her back. With a heavy heart and a steely resolve, Josh turned away from the facility, ready to face the challenges ahead. The journey was far from over, and the stakes had never been higher. But he was determined to see it through, to fight for the woman he had come to care for more than he ever thought possible. And so, with the dawn of a new day, Josh set off into the unknown, fueled by love, hope, and the promise of a brighter future. The desert air was cool in the early morning light, carrying with it the scent of sagebrush and the distant murmur of the wind. The sun had just begun to rise, casting long shadows across the barren landscape and painting the sky in hues of pink and orange. Josh stood on the edge of the facility, watching the vehicles disappear into the horizon, a mix of despair and determination etched on his face. Mila was gone, taken by Zeski's agents, and the facility felt eerily quiet in her absence. Josh clenched his fists, a surge of anger and helplessness coursing through him. He had promised to protect her, to keep her safe, and now she was in the hands of those who would use her as a pawn in a cosmic power struggle. The thought of her in danger was a knife twisting in his gut, but he couldn't afford to dwell on it. He had to act, and fast. He turned and walked back into the facility, his mind racing. The message Mila had sent was their only hope, a plea for help to her people on Solara, warning them of Zeski's intentions. But now, with her gone, Josh felt the weight of the mission pressing down on him. He couldn't just stand by and do nothing. He had to find a way to rescue Mila and stop Zeski's plans. Inside the facility, Josh made his way to the control room, hoping to find something, anything, that could help him. The consoles hummed with residual energy, the screens displaying complex data streams. Josh scanned the information, feeling out of his depth. He was a mechanic, not a scientist, but he was determined to figure out a way to use this technology to his advantage. As he sifted through the data, a notification popped up on one of the screens, a flashing icon indicating an incoming message. Josh's heart leaped in his chest. He quickly tapped the console, and the screen filled with a series of unfamiliar symbols. He frowned, struggling to decipher them. Just as he was about to give up, the symbols rearranged themselves, forming a coherent message in English. Message received. Assistance en route. Hold position. Coordinates locked. Do not engage. Josh's eyes widened, a surge of hope igniting within him. The message had reached Solara, and they were sending help. But there was an additional note of caution: do not engage. It was a direct order to stay put and wait for reinforcements. Josh understood the reasoning, but the thought of sitting idle while Mila was in danger was unbearable. He paced the room, torn between following the instructions and taking matters into his own hands. He knew he had to be smart about this. Charging him blindly would only get him killed and potentially jeopardize the mission. But every fiber of his being screamed at him to act, to do something, anything, to save Mila. Suddenly, another thought struck him, a wild, desperate idea. He rushed back to the console and searched the database for any information about Zeski's operations on Earth. If he could find out where they were holding Mila, he might be able to stage a rescue. The screen filled with data, and Josh's eyes darted over the information, searching for clues. Finally, he found what he was looking for: a set of coordinates linked to a location in the American Southwest, a remote area known for its desolation and isolation. It was the perfect place to hide someone or something important. Josh felt a thrill of fear and excitement. He had a destination, but he needed a plan. After Mila's abduction, Josh and his group of nomads gathered at a secret base in a remote desert region. The silence at the base was tinged with unrest inside. The nomads and the forces of Mila's people, the ex-Solara, were making final preparations against Zeski's approaching forces. The mission was to expose Zeski's treacherous plans and save Mila. Together with the nomad leader Kai, Josh devised a plan of attack. The plan was to distract the enemy forces with a spectacular attack so that Josh could rescue Mila. While Kai's team planted explosives around the base, Josh and a small group sneaked in. Once inside the base, Josh and his team quickly reached the room where Mila was being held. Mila greeted them with her hands tied and fear in her eyes. Josh raced against the clock to get them to retreat while he rescued Mila. As the fighting outside the base intensified, part of Mila's message to Solara had already been broadcast. In the midst of the fighting, Josh and Mila were reunited with Kai's team. Along the escape route, enemy forces were closing in on them, but with the support of the nomads, Josh and Mila managed to retreat safely. As the sun rose, the sky took on shades of pink and orange. Josh looked at Mila and once again felt that he was fighting for her and that he was with her. After Zeski's defeat, Josh and Mila stood at the doorstep of a new beginning, with a hopeful look at the future. In the control room of an abandoned mountain facility, the tension was palpable. Josh reviewed his operational plans as he watched Zeski's approaching forces on the screens. Mila stood beside him with a determined expression. Despite the arrival of Zalaran reinforcements, the seriousness of Zeski's attack could catch them off guard. Outside, a fierce battle was raging between enemy troops and Salarian and local resistance forces. Zeski's forces were heavily armed and using heavy artillery to overwhelm the facility's defenses. Josh and several resistance members devised a plan to neutralize the enemy artillery. Although a dangerous task, it was necessary to fortify the facility's defenses. After planting explosives to distract the enemy, Josh and his team stealthily approached the enemy artillery. After a brief but intense firefight, Josh neutralized the cannons. However, when they returned, they received word that Zeski had entered the main building. Quickly returning to the building, Josh saw Mila and the others coming face to face with Zeski. Zeski was defiantly urging them to surrender, but just then Zalaran reinforcements arrived. The Zalaran leader forced Zeski to surrender, and Zeski was eventually forced to lay down his weapon. Josh went to Mila and congratulated her on their victory. They hugged each other, feeling the weight of everything they had achieved together. Now both Solara and Earth were filled with hope for the future. Whatever the future brought, Josh and Mila would be by each other's side. 5 years had passed since the final showdown against Zeski, and the world had changed in ways Josh could have never imagined. The sky above the small town of Sunridge, Florida, was a brilliant blue, with only a few wispy clouds drifting lazily in the warm afternoon breeze. The once quiet town had become a place of fascination, known as the birthplace of an interstellar alliance that had reshaped the galaxy. But amidst all the changes, some things had remained constant, including the unassuming auto garage on the edge of town. Josh stood outside the garage, wiping his hands on a rag. The smell of oil and gasoline mixed with the salty sea breeze drifting in from the nearby coast. The garage had expanded over the years, thanks in no small part to the influx of curious tourists and visitors. The business had thrived, but today, as on many other days, Josh's thoughts were far from the mechanical repairs he had mastered. Instead, they were filled with the vibrant images of the past 5 years, and the family he had built in the most extraordinary of circumstances. A cheerful giggle broke him from his reverie. He turned to see a small figure darting around the corner of the garage, a little girl with vibrant blue skin and thick, black curls that bounced with each of her steps. Lila, his and Mila's daughter, was the living embodiment of 2 worlds brought together. She was a bundle of energy and curiosity, with eyes that sparkled with the wonder of a child discovering the world for the first time. "Daddy," look, Lila called, holding up a handful of brightly colored flowers she had picked from the garden. Her voice was filled with the innocent joy that only a child could possess.
Josh smiled, crouching down to her level. "Those are beautiful, sweetheart. Where did you find them?"
Lila pointed towards the backyard, her eyes wide with excitement. "By the big tree. Mommy says they're from Solara like her."
Josh's smile widened as he took the flowers, their delicate petals soft against his rough hands. Mila had indeed brought many things from Zalara plants, technology, and even cultural artifacts. But none had been as cherished as Lila, the daughter they had never expected but now couldn't imagine life without.
He picked Lila up, her small arms wrapping around his neck as he held her close. She smelled of fresh air and wildflowers, a comforting scent that filled him with warmth. "Let's go find Mommy," he suggested, carrying her toward the house. As they walked, Josh reflected on the journey that had brought them here. After the defeat of Zeski, a new era had begun. Solara and Arendor had entered a fragile peace, bolstered by the revelations of Zeski's treachery and the mutual desire to prevent further conflict. Earth, once considered a backwater planet of no importance, had become a symbol of unity and hope, a place where differences could be bridged. Mila had played a crucial role in the negotiations that followed, her bravery and wisdom earning her respect across the galaxy. She had become a diplomat and a leader, working tirelessly to forge alliances and maintain peace. And through it all, she had remained by Josh's side, their love deepening with each passing day. They reached the house, a charming structure nestled among trees and gardens that Mila had carefully cultivated. It was a blend of Earth and Zalaran styles, a testament to their shared life. Josh pushed open the door and stepped inside, the cool air a welcome relief from the summer heat. The interior was filled with a mix of earthly comforts and Zalaran elegance, soft cushions, intricate tapestries, and the gentle hum of advanced technology.
Mila stood in the kitchen, her back to them as she worked at the counter. She wore a simple dress, her long black hair cascading down her back. She turned as they entered, her face lighting up with a radiant smile. Her eyes, the same deep cerulean as Lila's, sparkled with love and warmth.
"There's my two favorite people," she greeted, wiping her hands on a towel and walking over to kiss Josh and Lila. "How was the garage today?"
Josh set Lila down, who immediately scampered off to play with her toys. He pulled Mila into a gentle embrace, breathing in her familiar scent. Busy as usual. But it's a good kind of busy.
Mila nodded, resting her head against his chest. "I'm glad. It's nice to have a little normalcy after everything." Josh chuckled, thinking of all the normal moments they had experienced over the years. There had been visits from Zalaran dignitaries, interviews with curious journalists, and even the occasional alien tourist, all curious about the planet that had defied the odds. Yet, through it all, Josh and Mila had managed to carve out a life for themselves, a life filled with love, laughter, and the everyday joys of raising their daughter. They moved to the living room, where a large window offered a view of the backyard. The garden was in full bloom, a riot of colors and scents, with both Earth and Zalaran plants thriving together. It was a symbol of their unique family, a blend of two worlds that had come together in harmony. Mila sat down on the couch, pulling Josh with her. They watched as Lila played outside, her laughter echoing through the open window. Mila leaned against Josh, her fingers intertwined with his. "Sometimes I can't believe how much has changed," she mused, her voice soft. "From running for my life to building a home here with you and Lila." Josh nodded, squeezing her hand. "It still feels surreal sometimes, but I wouldn't trade it for anything." They sat in comfortable silence, enjoying the peaceful afternoon. The sound of Lila's laughter filled the air, a constant reminder of the joy they had found in each other. It was a far cry from the chaos and danger they had faced, but it was a testament to the strength of their bond and the love that had grown between them. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, Josh felt a deep sense of contentment. The past 5 years had been a journey filled with challenges and triumphs, but they had come through it stronger and closer than ever. They had built a life together, a family that transcended the boundaries of space and culture. Mila rested her head on his shoulder, her eyes closed in contentment. "You know," she said, her voice a soft murmur, "I think we found our place. A place where we belong." Josh smiled, leaning down to kiss the top of her head. "I think you're right. This is our home and I wouldn't have it any other way." As the last light of day faded and the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Josh felt a deep sense of gratitude. He had found love and happiness in the most unexpected of places, and he was determined to cherish every moment. With Mila by his side and Lila's laughter filling the air, he knew that no matter what the future held, they would face it together. The night settled over Sunridge, the world outside quiet and peaceful. In the small house, filled with the warmth of family and love, Josh, Mila, and Lila sat together, a perfect picture of a family that had defied the odds and found their way to a new beginning. And as they looked to the stars, they knew that their story was just beginning, with endless possibilities waiting on the horizon.